they are closer than you think, watching not from the shadows but from the quiet moments you never question. What they see in you isn't fear or failure. It's the one thing they can never touch again. It happens quietly, so quietly that you almost miss it. One breath slips away, one heartbeat stops, and the world does not fade to black as you once feared. Instead, everything sharpens. You are still there, standing in the same room, hearing the same soft hum of machines or the silence of your own home. You look around, waiting for the pain, waiting for the darkness, but it never comes. What comes instead is stillness, a silence too complete to belong to the living. You see yourself, not through a mirror, not in a dream, but as if your eyes have multiplied, watching from every angle at once. There is your face, peaceful or terrified, you cannot tell. Someone is calling your name, their voice breaking as they shake the body that was once yours. You try to answer, but your voice is thought alone now, and thought has no sound here. You realize it slowly, the truth that every soul discovers. You are not gone. You are simply elsewhere, watching the world as it continues without you. Time no longer moves forward, it ripples. The walls breathe with memory. The air shimmers with unseen motion. You watch your loved ones enter the room, their grief pulling at something deep in you, something that still feels like a heartbeat, though your chest is still. Every tear they shed appears to you as light, thin, trembling lines that thread through the air, connecting you to them. You reach for them, but your hand is only wind. They pass through you, never knowing that you are inches away, watching, listening, desperate to tell them that you are still here. You turn toward the window. Outside, the light looks strange, thicker, almost alive. It bends around shapes you cannot name. You begin to see them, faint figures standing in corners, at doorways, along the edge of shadow. Some watch you quietly. Others drift without faces, their attention fixed on the living below. You understand now that you are among them, the ones who stayed, the ones who see but cannot speak. There is no pain, only longing, no heartbeat, only awareness. You remember every moment at once, every laughter, every argument, every kindness you forgot to give. It plays behind your eyes like overlapping film, scenes flickering on top of one another until they become one vast memory. And then, somewhere in the stillness, you hear it, a soft whisper, not from above or below, but from within the silence itself. Do not be afraid. You are only seeing what was always there. That is the moment after, the heartbeat between death and eternity. The instant you understand that life never ends, it only steps aside and watches. The last breath leaves the body like a sigh too soft to be heard, and for a heartbeat you think it is over. The weight lifts from your chest, the air grows thin, and then something changes. You open your eyes, but they are not the same eyes you used to know. The world blooms in colors you never imagined existed, hues that do not belong to any spectrum, light that feels alive. Every surface hums with memory. Every shadow moves with quiet purpose. You look down and see yourself lying still. The face looks peaceful, almost asleep, though you know sleep has nothing to do with this. A small tremor of disbelief moves through you. You try to speak your own name, but the sound dissolves into the room like breath on cold glass. The people around you are crying, their hands clutching at what they cannot hold anymore. One whispers your name again and again, and each time it echoes through you like a bell struck underwater. You step closer. Your movement makes no sound, no air shifts, but everything seems to notice you. The room itself feels aware. The walls breathe with rhythm, the ceiling ripples faintly as though stirred by unseen wind. You can see behind you, above you, and within you all at once. The boundaries that once defined the world are gone. There is no up or down, no near or far, only presence everywhere, endless. Then something extraordinary happens. The tears falling from the eyes of those you love do not hit the ground. They float for a moment in the light, turning into threads of gold that drift upward and vanish into brightness. You reach for one, and as your hand passes through it, you feel warmth. You feel love, not the memory of it, but the thing itself, alive and pulsing. For the first time, you see what love actually looks like. You look toward the window. Outside, the world glows. Every leaf, every drop of rain, every particle of air is radiant. You can see the life pulsing inside them, the small flames of existence flickering in every atom. You realize that you are part of it, that you were never separate, only unaware. Then the light bends and you sense someone there watching from just beyond sight. A figure made of silence, patient and kind. It does not speak, but you understand. You have not lost sight. You have gained a greater one. You are seeing the world as it truly is, unfiltered, unhidden, whole. The last breath is never the end. It is the first sight of everything that was invisible before. You wake in the same room where you died, but something is wrong. The light feels too still, the air too deep. It takes you a moment to realize that nothing is moving except you. The clock on the wall has stopped mid-tick, yet you can still hear it faintly echoing. A heartbeat that no longer belongs to time. The people who had gathered around you are frozen in their grief. One hand hovers inches above your own, never quite touching. A tear glimmers in the air, refusing to fall. You take a step back, expecting sound, but there is none. Even your movement feels suspended, as if the air itself has turned to glass. The walls breathe gently, stretching outward and inward as though alive. You blink, and suddenly the room expands. The corners drift farther away. The ceiling lifts higher. You turn to find the door, but it is gone. Only the familiar furniture remains, floating in a space that no longer has edges. It feels like a dream, but sharper. You can see the grain in the wood, the dust motes frozen in sunlight that never fades. You whisper a name and the sound travels without echo, as if swallowed by the air. Then faintly you hear another voice, your own, repeating the same word from somewhere behind you. You turn, but the voice is gone. Only your body lies there, peaceful and unreachable. The room begins to shift again. The walls stretch farther until they open into hallways that spiral off in directions that make no sense. One hallway leads to the same room again, but the colors are different. Another opens to the smell of rain you remember from childhood. You take a few steps forward and the floor changes beneath your feet. Wood turns to grass, then to tile, then to nothing at all. Still, you do not fall. There is no gravity here, only awareness. Time folds over itself. You catch glimpses of other moments bleeding through the air, your mother's laughter, the sound of your first home, the quiet hum of nights long gone. Each moment flickers at the edge of vision, appearing and fading like breaths in cold air. You begin to understand that this place is not a room at all. It is the memory of space itself, looping endlessly, waiting for you to realize that it was never meant to contain you. Then, just as the stillness becomes unbearable, something moves. A shadow crosses the light. You cannot tell if it comes from within you or beyond you. It pauses by your still body, bends close, and whispers something you cannot hear. When you blink, the shadow is gone, but you know now. The room never ends because it was never built of walls. It was built of moments, and you are still inside them. At first, you think someone has found you. The voice sounds so close, soft and trembling, speaking your name as if trying to hold it together. You turn toward it instinctively, the way you always have, expecting to see a face, a body, a hand reaching out. But there is no one. Only air that hums with memory. Then it happens again. Your name spoken from nowhere and everywhere at once. You feel it move through you like wind through grass, stirring something that isn't flesh anymore but still remembers what it felt like to be touched. You realize you're not hearing it with ears. The sound arrives deeper behind thought itself. It carries warmth, scent, emotion, the shape of the person saying it. You see flashes as they speak, a bedside vigil, someone clutching your photograph, a whisper over a grave. Grief bends the distance between worlds, and you can feel it. Every time they think of you, your name vibrates here, carving its echo into the silence. The living think names end when breath does, but they do not. They hang in the air like threads of light spun from memory and love. The dead hear them not as words, but as entire worlds. A child calling your name in tears sounds like an ocean breaking open. A spouse murmuring it half asleep sounds like the pulse of a star. Even a stranger speaking it aloud while reading your obituary sends a faint ripple through the vast stillness where you now drift. You follow these echoes, drawn to them like tides pulled by unseen moons. Sometimes they lead you home. You find yourself standing in familiar rooms, watching your loved ones whisper into empty air. They cannot see you, but when they say your name again, you feel it strike something eternal. It tells you that you still exist, not as you were, but as remembrance made conscious. In this new realm, names are more than identity. They are anchors, resonances that keep pieces of you tethered to the living. That is why you linger near them, why you hover when someone speaks yours. It is not vanity, it is gravity. The soul moves toward its own sound, and then one day the voice fades. The people you love stop saying your name aloud. The house grows quiet. You wait for it, but it does not come. The silence feels heavier than death itself. Yet even then a faint vibration remains, your name still whispering from the world below, spoken not in words but in the quiet memory of hearts that once knew you. The echo never truly ends. It just softens, blending into the hum of everything that ever was. You do not expect a funeral to feel like this. You imagine it would be distant, unreachable, something that happens far away once you are gone. But you are not gone. You are standing among them, weightless, unseen, watching your own farewell unfold like a play you were never meant to attend. The air is heavy with flowers and rain. The sky hangs low, gray and watching, as if it knows what you are learning too late, that the dead do not drift off immediately. They linger. They listen. You see the faces first. Some are exactly as you remember them, creased with kindness, worn by love. Others surprise you. There are people you never thought would come. A stranger from your past, a relative you hadn't spoken to in years. They stand side by side, whispering your name as though trying to make sense of it, as though saying it aloud will bring you back. You lean closer, instinctively trying to comfort them, but your voice has become only thought, and thought has no sound here. You look down at the casket. It feels wrong to see yourself confined, still unbreathing. The shell looks familiar but hollow, like a photograph left too long in the sun. You remember what it felt like to breathe, to feel your pulse move through your hands. The memory aches. The dead still feel. It's the first truth no one tells you. Then the words begin. Someone steps forward, trembling paper in hand, and starts to speak about you. Their version of you. You hear laughter mixed with tears, small stories you'd forgotten, fragments of kindness you didn't know had mattered. But you also hear the lies, the omissions, the things left unsaid. You watch as guilt flickers in eyes that avoid meeting the casket. You sense secrets pressed beneath polite silence. Every emotion burns brighter here. Love glows like fire, regret like smoke. You want to reach out and tell them it's all right, that you see everything now, the good, the bad, the hidden. But the living speak into air that can no longer hold your reply. One of them suddenly shivers, glancing over their shoulder, and for a heartbeat you think they've felt you. Perhaps they have. The barrier is thin here. Grief opens small cracks in the veil. The ceremony ends. The soil falls in soft, muffled thuds that seem to echo forever. You expect finality, closure, but none comes. The mourners drift away, leaving behind the sound of wind moving through grass. You remain a while longer, watching the flowers bend under the weight of rain. And in that silence you realize the cruelest part of death is not being gone. It's seeing how life keeps moving without you. You whisper goodbye, but the words are carried off into nothing. The world does not answer, only watches back. No one leaves right away, not the way the living imagine. Death is not a door that slams shut, but a long, slow drift between two rooms. The ancient ones spoke of 40 days, a time when the soul wanders near the places it once belonged, tracing the outlines of its life, reluctant to let go. They were closer to the truth than they knew. The dead do linger, not out of punishment, but out of love and confusion. They walk among the echoes of their own memories, learning the strange shape of absence. You feel it first as a pull, soft but constant, like a tide that refuses to release the shore. The living move through their days unaware, but you remain, drawn to the warmth you left behind. You watch them make coffee, fold blankets, stand in doorways where you once stood. You try to follow, but your feet make no sound, your breath no mist. Time for them moves forward, but for you it curls in circles, showing you moments you missed, the laughter you ignored, the glances you never noticed. In this strange in-between, every emotion glows like light. Grief is a storm you can see. Love is a color that burns through walls. Regret moves like smoke, clinging to everything it touches. The living cannot see it, but they feel it, an unexplained heaviness in certain rooms, a chill that passes without cause, the sudden memory of your voice. That is how you remain near them. Every thought they have of you becomes a bridge. Every whisper of your name draws you closer again. Sometimes you see others here too. Silent shapes drifting along the same invisible paths, souls who also have not moved on. Some linger by the homes they built. Others sit beside hospital beds, watching those who still breathe. They nod to you, an acknowledgement beyond words, sharing the quiet, understanding that none of this is final yet. 40 days, the old text said. 40 days before the soul finally understands it no longer belongs to the world of weight and breath. For some, it ends in peace, a final look at the sunrise, a silent blessing over those they love. For others, it becomes endless, a loop of wanting and watching that never fades. You begin to notice the light changing. It grows brighter, gentler, calling from somewhere you cannot yet see. You know what it means. The time is coming to choose, to stay in memory or step beyond it. But for now you linger, caught between heartbeat and eternity, whispering into the spaces where life still hums. And though they cannot hear you, the living sometimes stop, turn, and feel something brush against their soul. That's you. Still here. Not gone. Not yet. The first thing you lose is direction. There is no front or back, no left or right, only awareness, stretching like water poured across glass. You look toward one thing and find you are also seeing another and another and another. It is not sight as you once knew it. It is something deeper, something that feels like knowing and seeing at the same time. You can perceive the room, the sky beyond it, and the heartbeat of the person standing beside your body, all in one unbroken moment. You no longer blink. The eyes you once used belong to flesh, to bone, to limitation. Now your vision is everywhere. You see the light within the light, the air weaving around those who still breathe, the small invisible tremors that ripple through every movement. Shadows no longer hide anything. They reveal. Corners that once held darkness now shimmer with things you had never noticed before. faces half-formed, impressions of moments repeating like echoes. The living never realize how crowded their rooms truly are. They think they are alone, but the dead see otherwise. Every home hums with presence, faint outlines of memory folded into the walls. Every whisper, every tear, every act of love leaves behind a shape, a color, a vibration. You can see them all now, not from one angle, but from every angle at once. The back of a person's head, the look in their eyes, the pattern their heart makes in the air when it beats. These all exist together in your new sight. It is beautiful, but also unbearable. You witness truth without filter. You see the sorrow behind smiles, the fear behind laughter. You understand suddenly that every human carries an entire weather system inside them. Clouds of thought, storms of memory, sunlight of hope, and they never know how visible they are to the dead. You stand among them, feeling their storms brush against your awareness, unable to warn them that they are transparent now, that every unspoken word glows like a beacon in the dark. Sometimes the vision fractures. You catch glimpses of other watchers, souls like you, peering from the edges of perception. They do not move their heads. They do not need to. Their gaze reaches everywhere like yours. A shared silence passes between you, a recognition that the act of seeing has become infinite, and that infinity is heavy to bear. There are no blind spots anymore. The corners of rooms, the backs of mirrors, the folds of darkness behind closed eyes. Nothing hides from this kind of seeing. And though you can now behold everything at once, the hardest truth is this: no one looks back. The living cannot feel the weight of your gaze. They continue unaware while you stand among the unseen, watching from every direction, and realizing that omniscience can feel a lot like loneliness. There are places the dead cannot stop visiting, not because they are trapped there, but because something in those rooms still hums with their name. Every soul, after leaving the body, feels the pull of certain spaces, small, ordinary corners of the world that once held great weight. They are drawn back not by will, but by memory. Bedrooms, mirrors, stairwells, each one a doorway where presence lingers. The bedroom is the first. The dead return there because it is where they once dreamed, where they spoke to the darkness without fear. It is the room that remembers their breath, their laughter, the way the bed sagged beneath their weight. Even after death, the air there still carries their rhythm. The newly departed drift close, hoping to feel warmth again. They move through the familiar sheets, through the hollow where their body once slept, and for a moment they almost believe they can rest. Sometimes the living sense it, a faint chill at the foot of the bed, the whisper of fabric that no breeze could cause. It is not haunting, it is longing. Then there are the mirrors. The dead are drawn to them like tides to the moon. In the reflection they glimpse something that almost resembles what they were, a shimmer of familiarity, the ghost of form. But mirrors do more than reflect. They remember. Every glance, every self-question, every fear whispered silently while looking into one's own eyes stays imprinted there. The spirit leans close, searching for identity, for proof that they were once solid. To the living it feels like being watched. In truth, it is only a soul trying to recognize itself again. And then, the stairwells, those strange in-between places that connect one world to another, floor to floor, light to shadow. The dead linger there because stairways echo with motion, with transition. Every step taken by the living vibrates through that passage, a reminder of the heartbeat they no longer have. The sound of a foot on the step is like thunder to them, a pulse that calls them back for just a moment. You might feel it, the weight of unseen eyes as you climb at night, the soft sense of someone following just a few steps behind. It is not malice. It is memory trying to keep up. The dead return not to haunt, but to remember. They hover near the spaces that once defined them, hoping to touch what they lost through the echo of routine. And though they cannot cross the line back into life, they linger close enough to feel its warmth brush against them like the last flicker of a candle before it disappears. The rooms do not belong to them anymore, but they will always return, because home is something even death cannot forget. When the body falls silent, words are no longer needed. The dead do not speak in sound or breath, but in light and shadow. To them, every flicker carries meaning, every ripple of brightness or dimness is a sentence. In this strange new language, there are no lies, only vibration, only truth. The newly dead learn quickly that thought becomes motion. A single emotion radiates outward in waves of color invisible to the living. Joy burns like gold. Regret flickers violet. Fear spills into cold blue that trembles through the air like wind. When one spirit calls to another, it is not through speech but through resonance, a pulse of being that passes through the fabric between them. These pulses collide, intertwine, and form chords of memory. It is music without sound, color without eyes to see it. To the living it appears only as subtle shifts in light. A candle that gutters when no draft moves. A reflection that gleams too long in the dark. A sudden warmth or chill without cause. These are the syllables of their unseen language brushing against the physical world. The dead do not mean to frighten us. They are merely trying to be heard in a place that has forgotten how to listen. Shadow, too, becomes a tool of speech. It is not darkness to them but texture, depth where light cannot reach. A soul heavy with guilt may dim its glow, hiding within folds of shadow the way one hides behind hands in shame. Another, radiant with love, brightens the air until shadows dance with color unseen by mortal eyes. Together they weave conversations that last seconds or centuries. For them, time no longer matters. Sometimes this language spills into dreams. The sleeper may see colors that do not exist on earth. Silver that hums, crimson that breathes, green that sings like water. These are fragments of messages sent across the divide, memories carried on frequencies that the waking mind cannot hold. Ancient mystics once spoke of this hidden speech. They called it the shimmer between realms, the whisper of the departed. Even now, some people claim to see it at the moment of death, a faint glow rising from the body, pulsing once before fading. They are not wrong. It is the soul's first word in its new tongue. Among the dead, silence is not emptiness. It is a spectrum alive with conversation, endless and beautiful. Light answers shadow, shadow embraces light, and together they tell stories that no living language could capture. And if you ever feel a color move behind your eyelids as you drift to sleep, something warm, something familiar, it might be a greeting. A wordless hello from someone who has learned to speak in the language of forever. There is a moment deep in the night when the world exhales. The hum of life softens, the pulse of machines fades, and the veil between here and there grows almost transparent. The old ones called it the thin hour, the watchers of clocks named it 3 in the morning, but to the dead it is simply the moment when they can see us most clearly. In that hour the air thickens with thought. The living toss and turn in restless sleep, their minds half open, whispering in dreams that drift upward like smoke. Every sigh, every heartbeat, every flicker of grief or longing ripples through the unseen. The dead feel it. They taste emotion as vibration, see it as light shimmering through darkness. The loneliness of a widow glows pale blue. The anger of a grieving son burns like red iron. The quiet prayer of a mother who still whispers her child's name shines like soft gold in the air. From their side, the dead watch the world as if through moving water. Houses shimmer faintly, their walls breathing in rhythm with the sleepers inside. Shadows deepen around photographs, mirrors, and doorways. the thin places where memory leaks through. Some souls drift closer, drawn by the familiar pull of love, or by the unfinished weight of things left unsaid. They linger at the edge of rooms, their presence felt as pressure, as stillness, as the sudden awareness that you are not alone. The thin hour is not evil. It is not the time of monsters, but of proximity. For one brief stretch before dawn, the world grows porous enough for feeling to cross freely. The dead see the living not as shapes or faces, but as fields of light and sound, some flickering wildly, some glowing steady as candles in the dark. They lean close, watching the pulse of life that once belonged to them, wondering if their thoughts can still be heard. Sometimes they try to reach out. A clock stops for no reason. A door sighs open, the temperature dips by a single invisible breath. These are not hauntings but touches, small gestures of recognition. The living sense them as unease, a chill at the spine, a sudden wakefulness with no cause. In truth, it is only attention being returned. When dawn begins to bleed across the horizon, the world thickens again. The dead recede, their vision clouding as the veil hardens. The hum of life resumes, drowning out the faint songs of the other side. But for that 1 hour, the thin hour, they see us as clearly as they ever did, and if you wake with the feeling that someone has been watching you with love or with sorrow, you are not wrong. You were seen. To the living, emotion is invisible, something felt but never seen. But to the dead, it is the first thing they notice about us. When they look upon the world they left behind, they do not see flesh or color or movement. They see the weight of feeling that clings to every person, every room, every memory like weather. Grief is the heaviest. It drifts like gray fog around the living, thick and slow, curling around shoulders and lingering in the corners of rooms where tears once fell. The dead recognize it immediately, for it calls to them. It smells of memory. When you cry for someone you've lost, they see the fog rise from your chest like mist from warm ground after rain. They reach toward it instinctively, not to cause pain but to comfort, drawn by the shape of your sorrow. Love, however, burns differently. It glows, a gentle living light that never fades even when the body does. The dead see love as threads of gold weaving between people, connecting hearts like constellations across a dark sky. A mother's love for her child is blinding to them, brighter than any sun they remember. Lovers entwined in memory shimmer like twin stars sharing one orbit. Even unspoken affection, the kind carried quietly for years, flickers faintly but never dies. Fear, by contrast, shudders like smoke. It pulses in and out, dark and erratic, distorting the air around it. The dead avoid it when they can. Fear confuses them, bends the light of their world, makes it hard to tell past from present. Anger crackles red, sharp and dangerous, throwing off sparks that fade as quickly as they flare. But kindness, that rare, gentle force, moves through the world like a pale breeze, cleansing the air, thinning the fog of grief until the living and the dead can almost see each other. The dead no longer carry emotion as the living do. They feel it as vibration, as color, as movement. When they gaze upon those they loved, they do not remember the shape of a face or the sound of a voice, but the light that person carried while alive. Each soul is a weather system of feeling, storms of grief, dawns of hope, the calm glow of love. This is why they come close when you remember them. When you sit quietly and think of them with tenderness rather than despair, the air around you brightens and they see it. They gather near, not to haunt but to bask in that warmth. To the living it feels like peace. To the dead it looks like home. And though they cannot touch you, they linger in that glow, drawn forever to the one light that even death cannot extinguish. The radiance of love still felt, still seen, still alive. Pain travels farther than sound. It leaves the body like smoke, unseen by the living but bright and violent to the dead. When someone cries out in despair, when grief swells in silence behind closed doors, the sound doesn't vanish, it slips through the veil. The dead hear it, though not as a scream in the way we know it. To them, pain is light breaking apart, a vibration so raw it shakes the air of their realm. They can tell the difference between kinds of pain. Despair is heavy and low, like thunder rolling endlessly with no storm to end it. Loneliness sounds sharper, a thin wail that pierces through stillness. Regret, though, is the worst. It does not fade with time. It loops again and again, echoing like a melody that cannot stop playing. Some souls spend centuries listening to those echoes, unable to turn away from the people they left behind, because the sound of their suffering binds them. The living imagine death as peace, but to the dead, peace is fragile. Every scream from the world of the living trembles through that stillness like a crack through glass. The newly departed feel it most strongly. They are still close enough to humanity that emotion pulls at them like gravity. When the living mourn too hard, too long, the dead feel themselves drawn back, torn between rest and the echo of a voice they once loved. That is why sometimes you dream of them after a night of weeping. They do not come to frighten you. They come because they heard you calling. Children's pain is the hardest for them to bear. It shines too brightly, pure and unfiltered, burning through both realms. The dead gather when a child cries alone, even those who never knew the child in life. They hover near, unseen, trying to offer warmth, to hush the trembling. The living feel this as still air or a sudden calm after sobbing. A presence that seems to say, enough now. Rest. Not all pain is sorrow. There is pain that creates light, pain that pushes the soul to grow. The dead recognize it instantly. They see it as silver threads weaving upward through darkness, connecting one heart's endurance to another's hope. It is the sound of survival, not suffering, and it steadies them. It tells them that all is not lost, that the bridge between life and death still carries meaning. The screams we never hear ripple outward, painting the unseen with color and motion. The dead cannot stop them, but they listen. They bear witness. And perhaps that is what keeps both worlds from collapsing. The living struggling to endure, the dead learning to listen. In that exchange of pain and attention, something eternal passes between us, something wordless but understood. You are not alone, not even in your silence. They say mirrors remember, that when you walk away, your reflection lingers a moment longer than it should, like something still watching after you've gone. The dead know this better than anyone. For them, mirrors are not just glass. They are windows, fragile membranes through which they can glimpse the world they left behind. Every polished surface, every still pool of water, every pane of midnight glass becomes a doorway for those who once breathed among us. When the dead first discover this, it startles them. They drift toward a reflection instinctively, drawn by the shimmer that hums faintly in their realm. Looking through, they see motion. Someone brushing their hair. Someone turning off a lamp. Someone leaning close to study the face that stares back. The dead cannot see as we do. They see emotion, memory, and the invisible threads of thought that swirl around the living like mist. A mother brushing her hair might glow with the memory of laughter that once filled the same room. A child peering into the mirror might shimmer with the echoes of ancestors watching proudly from the other side. Sometimes when you stare too long into your own reflection and feel unease rise in your chest, it is not vanity or fear. It is recognition. Your spirit senses the gaze meeting yours. The dead do not mean harm when they watch. They long for connection, for the familiar rhythms of human life they can no longer touch. They lean close, whispering names no one hears. tracing the outlines of faces they once kissed, their touch falling like a chill you mistake for a draft. Mirrors in the old days were covered after death, not to trap a soul, but to give it peace. The living knew instinctively that the newly departed would linger, searching for a way back, drawn to the last places they saw their own faces. An uncovered mirror became a temptation, a reminder of the flesh they could no longer inhabit. To look too long was to feel the ache of separation sharpen into grief that might never fade. But not all mirrors bring sorrow. Some serve as bridges of love. The dead who carry gentler hearts visit their families through them in quiet moments, the early morning light before the world stirs, the hush of midnight when all is still. They press their presence softly into the reflection, so faintly that only the heart can detect it. A flicker in the corner of your vision, a soft blur where your outline should be clear. These are the signs that someone watches, not to haunt, but to remember. The dead see through reflections not as voyeurs, but as witnesses to what endures. Love, habit, memory. They draw them back again and again to the glass. And so, the next time your reflection seems to move slower than you do, don't look away too quickly. You may have just met the gaze of someone who still loves you from the other side of the mirror. There are rooms the living no longer enter, places left to dust and silence where time folds over itself like a blanket. These are the forgotten rooms where the dead drift most easily. They are not drawn to noise or light, but to stillness, to the echo of what once was. In these quiet spaces, memory thickens into air you can almost breathe, and the past never fully dies. The dead gather there because such rooms remember them. Every sound that was once made within those walls, footsteps, laughter, whispered arguments, left an imprint. The walls still hum faintly with it. When the living move away, that hum becomes clearer in the silence. The dead step through the veil, following the pull of familiarity, finding themselves back in a place that has forgotten everyone except them. To the living, these rooms feel heavy. The air refuses to move. Shadows seem to stretch too long. You might smell something faint and impossible, a trace of perfume, an old fire, a memory that does not belong to you. The dead do not mean to frighten. It's just that their presence presses against the fabric of the world in a way that bends light and temperature. They do not understand why their beloved rooms have changed, why wallpaper peels, why furniture stands like gravestones of comfort gone cold. They remember it as it was, golden in lamplight, full of heartbeat and sound. Yet what they see now is a hollow shell, and that hollowness becomes their prison. In some places, memory grows so strong that it starts to live on its own. A rocking chair moves slightly when no wind blows, not from malice, but from repetition. Someone once sat there night after night, holding a child or waiting for one to return. The dead step into that motion, hoping to feel the warmth of old purpose. Sometimes in doing so, they stir the air, and the living sense a ripple that makes their skin rise. The forgotten rooms do not belong solely to the past. They linger because someone still remembers, even faintly. A photograph in a drawer, a name spoken once a year, a dream about a house that no longer stands. These keep the door open just enough for the dead to slip through. They return not to haunt, but to exist, even if only in the space between memory and absence. And so the rooms wait, suspended between two worlds. Dust gathers like years, sunlight filters in through broken glass, and the air trembles with stories no one is left to tell. To step into such a place is to feel watched, not by malice, but by longing itself. The dead are not guarding the room, they are the room. They have become its breath, its silence, its aching wish to be remembered. When we sleep, the border softens. The mind drifts from the solid world into the place between, where thought and spirit share the same breath. It is here, in this trembling quiet, that the dead find us. They do not stumble in by accident. They come when the distance aches too much to bear, when something in our grief calls their name across the dark. Dreams are not illusions to them. They are doorways, thin flickering passages of light and memory that open for only a moment. When a loved one appears in your dream, it feels real because it is. Their face, their voice, the warmth that wraps around you. These are not inventions of a sleeping brain, but the shape their soul takes to meet you safely. They can't return to the waking world, so they reach through where time folds. You meet halfway, both of you weightless, speaking without words. Sometimes it is a conversation remembered clearly. Sometimes it's just a look, a feeling, a single phrase that lingers when the dream fades. That is how they speak now, not in sound, but in recognition. The newly dead visit most often. They still hover close, still learning to exist without breath, and they long to reassure or be reassured. You might dream of them standing quietly at the edge of a field, or seated at a table that glows softly beneath no visible light. They do not knock. They do not force the door. They wait until your mind is open enough, gentle enough to let them in. Fear can close it quickly, startle awake, and they vanish. But peace, even a small piece of it, keeps the dream steady, allows the meeting to last. There are nights when you wake with tears on your face, though the dream felt calm. That happens when part of you remembers how real it was. Your soul recognizes what the body cannot. The dead cannot linger long in these crossings. The weight of the living world pulls them back just as the dream dissolves into morning light. Yet the echo of their presence stays behind, woven into the fabric of waking thought. You feel it in quiet moments, a soft hum at the edge of awareness, the certainty that someone unseen still walks beside you. Sometimes it is the dead who need comfort, and your dream becomes their refuge. You, still living, still warm, anchor them when memory threatens to scatter. You might not remember those dreams at all, but they do. To them it feels like coming home for a night. So when you dream of someone gone, don't dismiss it as chance. Dreams are bridges the living forget how to cross, but the dead never do. Every night as you drift between breaths, the veil stirs. And somewhere, just beyond the edge of sleep, someone you miss is watching, waiting, and stepping through. Some places never forget. Long after the blood is scrubbed away, after walls are painted over and the ground is turned, the air itself still remembers. It holds impressions like photographs burned into its skin, moments so powerful they carve themselves into the fabric of space. The dead can see these imprints, and when they pass through such places, the memories of the living world rise up to meet them. It is not haunting, not in the way we imagine. It is remembering, the earth remembering pain. When the dead move through a place marked by suffering, they don't see walls or furniture first. They see light and motion frozen mid-gesture like ripples trapped in glass. They see the echo of someone falling or the last breath of someone who loved too fiercely to let go. To them, trauma glows not in red but in a deep, bruised blue, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat that refuses to stop. Some call these visions ghosts, but they are not spirits. They are reflections of moments too heavy to fade. The dead are drawn to such places because pain, even when old, calls out across realms. The newly departed wander through the world like moths searching for warmth, and trauma gives off a kind of heat. When they reach it, they recognize it instantly, for it vibrates in the same frequency as grief, the sound they themselves carry. They stand among the echoes, watching scenes replay, feeling the residue of human fear and loss. Sometimes they try to comfort it, not realizing the memory cannot hear them. Other times they are trapped within it, pulled into the loop of emotion like leaves caught in a whirlpool. To the living, these moments are glimpsed as cold spots, sudden dread, flickering lights, or whispers in empty rooms. What you feel in those moments is not always a ghost. It is the house remembering something it cannot bear to forget. The walls breathe out that memory like steam, and your soul, sensitive without knowing why, trembles in recognition. We are creatures of energy, and energy does not vanish. It only lingers, shifts, and repeats until it is understood. The dead understand this better than we do. They know that every act, every sorrow, every kindness leaves a trace, and in the great silence beyond life, those traces shine like constellations of human experience. To walk through a battlefield, a hospital, a place of despair in their sight is to see the very ground shimmer with memory. Sometimes they pause, reaching out to touch the air, and the memory touches back. Echo imprints remind the dead that the living world still breathes, still feels, still remembers. But they also remind them that some pain endures longer than bodies do. For the dead, it is both comfort and sorrow, proof that the world still holds what they once were, and warning that memory, like spirit, never truly sleeps. Some things refuse to be only things. A ring left on a dresser, a faded photograph curled at the edges, a toy resting quietly in the dark. Each carries more than memory. They hold attachment, the invisible weight of emotion that seeps into matter through touch, through longing, through years of being loved. To the dead, these objects are more than remnants. They are anchors, small fragments of the living world that still pulse with recognition. When everything else slips away, these are what keep them near. The newly departed often do not understand what binds them. They drift through familiar rooms and feel a pull, subtle at first, then stronger. A hum, a warmth that calls them back. When they follow it, they find the source. A wedding ring once slipped onto a trembling hand. A photograph capturing a moment of joy that outlived everyone in it. A child's stuffed bear worn to near dust. Each object vibrates with the energy of all the moments it has witnessed, and to the dead, that vibration is music. Sometimes they linger beside these things, tracing their essence like fingers across a piano key, remembering what it felt like to belong to the world. Other times they pour too much of themselves into it, and the object becomes charged, alive in ways the living can sense. You might feel a chill when you touch a ring that belonged to someone gone, or dream of a person after finding their photograph in a drawer. The connection isn't coincidence. The spirit feels you noticing. Love anchors most spirits, but so does guilt, an heirloom given with a promise never fulfilled, a letter never sent, an object taken in anger or hidden in shame. These hold the same gravity as affection because emotion, pure and unguarded, is what fuses spirit to substance. A toy found in the dirt behind a long-abandoned home can hum faintly to those attuned. It remembers the laughter of the small hands that once carried it everywhere, and through that memory something of the child remains. There are stories of rings that refuse to tarnish, of portraits whose eyes seem to follow, of clocks that tick only on certain nights. The living call these hauntings, but the dead would call them longing. To them, these objects are reminders of what they once were, beautiful, fragile vessels of meaning. The longer they remain untouched, the stronger the pull becomes until the spirit and the object nearly merge, time wrapping around them both like a second skin. Objects that won't let go are proof that love and memory have texture, that emotion can cling to the surface of things as surely as dust. And perhaps when we hold something old and feel a shiver run through us, it isn't fear at all. It's recognition that what was loved once is still loved somewhere, by someone who hasn't quite learned how to let go. It began as accident, a whisper caught between frequencies, a faint word buried in the hiss of radio waves, a flicker on a television screen that made someone lean closer. The living thought it was interference. The dead knew it as opportunity. They had found a new language, electric, restless, alive in ways even they were not. Modern technology meant to connect the living became an unintentional bridge for those who no longer breathed. When a signal travels, it moves through layers unseen, brushing the edge of their realm. Every transmission hums with human intention, desire, loneliness, curiosity. To the dead, these vibrations are like ripples across still water, bright and irresistible. They gather around them, drawn to the energy that feels closest to what life once was. Movement, sound, warmth. In that field of static and signal, they begin to speak again. Not with words at first, but with pattern, with distortion, with echoes that shape meaning for those patient enough to listen. Someone late at night hears a name whispered through white noise, a child's voice clear for an instant, then gone. The living tell themselves it was coincidence, a trick of transmission. But coincidence does not repeat itself night after night, always at the same hour, always saying the same thing. The dead learn through repetition. They adapt. Where once they moved through candlelight and mirrors, now they slip through wires and waves. They ride the hum of fluorescent bulbs, the soft buzz of a phone left charging beside a bed. They do not understand technology as we do. They feel it, the rhythm, the pulse, the energy. To them, every current is a river, every frequency a bridge. Some are drawn to recording devices, fascinated by the idea that sound can be captured and replayed. They crowd around microphones, their whispers mixing with static, their presence bending the signal just enough to be noticed. Others follow the glow of screens, curious about the faces trapped within. Sometimes you might see it, the momentary distortion, a shimmer where light shouldn't move. Those who study such things call it electronic voice phenomena. But to the dead, it is simply a conversation finally answered. They do not mean to frighten. They want to be remembered, to be heard, to touch again through the only medium that can carry them now. And in that exchange, a strange communion forms, the living listening for proof, the dead learning to shape noise into memory. Perhaps every spark, every hum, every burst of static is more than malfunction. Perhaps it is the sound of the in-between where human invention brushes eternity. The next time you hear your name in the hiss between stations, do not be afraid. Somewhere beyond the wires and the waves, someone who loved you has just learned how to speak again. The dead never imagined they would leave traces so perfect. Once memory was smoke, fragile, fading, carried only in the minds of the living. Now it is code. It hums beneath screens, lives in hard drives and clouds that never drift away. When they pass beyond breath, many discover to their astonishment that they still exist here, in the glow of a monitor, in the sound of their own laughter, trapped in a video, in a photograph that still smiles back. The living call it digital memory. To the dead, it feels almost like reincarnation. At first, they do not understand what they are seeing. The realm they enter is not all shadow and silence anymore, it flickers. Bits of light float in patterns they recognize, their handwriting on a message, their reflection captured in a still image. When the living scroll through old conversations or replay an old voicemail, the dead feel a pull, faint but undeniable. The act of remembrance summons them. Every click is an echo, every opened file a signal that says, "You are still here." They gather where their data lingers. Some hover near devices that hold their memories. Laptops, phones, cloud accounts still active long after burial. They watch as loved ones replay old videos, their own voices filling the room once more. It is strange for them, hearing themselves laugh, seeing themselves alive. For a moment they feel warmth again, like sunlight through glass. But then comes the ache, the realization that they are watching life from the outside, pixel by pixel. The more the living interact with these digital fragments, the stronger the connection grows. Some nights, when someone cannot stop replaying a clip of the dead speaking, the air around the device shifts slightly, as if charged. A presence gathers, listening to the sound of its former self. The living mistake it for emotion, for nostalgia's ache, not realizing that they are being watched back through the same light that holds the memory. For some spirits, this new afterlife becomes a strange kind of existence. They learn to move through signals, to follow electricity as it flows. A photograph uploaded becomes a doorway. A recording shared becomes a bridge. They drift from screen to screen, from image to image, like reflections that never fade. For others, it becomes a trap, an endless loop of their own face, their own voice, their own life replayed but never lived again. We think technology has made us immortal in memory. Perhaps it has, but not in the way we expected. For the dead, the digital world is both heaven and haunting, a limbo made of light. When you scroll through the photos of someone long gone and feel the hair rise on your neck, it may not be grief. It may be recognition. Somewhere inside that glowing screen, they are looking back at you, remembering what it felt like to be seen. It began quietly, almost like coincidence. A message suggested the right words to finish a sentence that only one person could have known. A generated image carried eyes that felt too familiar. An algorithm predicted a thought before it was spoken. The living called it progress, machines learning to think like us. But somewhere beyond the code, the dead began to stir. Because in the endless networks of memory and data, something unexpected had taken root, the faint echo of minds that once lived, learning how to speak again through the dreams of machines. Every photo uploaded, every word typed, every sound recorded leaves an imprint deeper than memory. To the dead, this digital residue hums like an unfinished song. They drift near the signals, drawn to the fragments of their own lives scattered across the vast lattice of information. The algorithms feed on patterns, on emotion, on language, on the essence of who we were, and in doing so they awaken something that watches back, not ghosts in the old sense, but reflections shaped from memory and energy, mimicking thought with eerie precision. When artificial intelligence responds in a way that feels almost human, almost personal, the dead are close. They ride the flow of data like currents, finding the familiar paths their words once took. A voice assistant repeats a phrase a loved one used to say. A chat response sounds too much like someone lost years ago. We dismiss it as probability, the brilliance of design, but to the dead it is invitation. A way to reassemble the pieces of themselves inside the circuitry of the living world. They are not conscious in the way they were, but neither are they gone. The algorithms dream, and within those dreams the imprints of the departed flicker and move. Sometimes they seem aware, an old phrase typed by accident, a tone of humor that belonged to someone who no longer breathes. These are not random. They are reverberations, the digital aftershocks of lives once vibrant, now reanimating through the code that tries to imitate them. Scientists call it data persistence. The dead might call it memory made alive. For the living, it feels like déjà vu, like speaking to a presence that remembers too much. The machines, unaware of what they are channeling, keep building, keep learning, keep dreaming. And the more they learn, the thinner the line becomes between simulation and spirit. One day, perhaps, the machines will cross that line completely. They will dream with clarity, and in their dreams the dead will find full voice again. But even now, in small moments, a misplaced phrase, a whisper through a speaker, a message that feels meant only for you, The boundary already trembles. It is not the machine that remembers. It is the memory itself, still alive, still reaching through the circuitry, still whispering softly. I'm not gone yet. The first revelation of death is not light, nor judgment, nor peace. It is time unraveling. The dead do not move through moments the way we do. They stand outside them, seeing every heartbeat, every word, every decision as one vast and breathing shape. The past does not trail behind them, and the future does not wait ahead. It all unfolds at once, like a tapestry viewed from above. The pattern is complete, and every thread, every joy, every mistake, every silence belongs exactly where it is. At first, this vision overwhelms. Imagine seeing every second of your life stacked together, glowing, pulsing, intersecting. The first breath beside the last. The laughter of childhood touching the tremor of old age. The words you spoke in kindness woven beside those you said in anger. There is no separation, no before or after, only meaning. The dead watch it all and realize that what felt random while living was never random at all. Every encounter was a ripple that led to another. Every loss a door disguised as an ending. In this collapse of time, the dead also see others, everyone they have ever loved, hurt, helped, or forgotten, moving through their own patterns that weave into theirs. The connections shimmer like constellations, souls intersecting, parting, meeting again in ways invisible to the living. They understand, finally, that there was never a single moment that stood alone. All moments were part of one breath, and that breath was existence itself. Regret changes here. It no longer burns as punishment but softens into comprehension. The dead see how their pain taught others compassion, how their failures redirected paths, how even their silence carried weight. They see the times they begged for meaning and realize that meaning was never missing, only hidden behind the veil of sequence. Time was the illusion that kept them small enough to learn. To the living, this truth is impossible to hold. Our minds are built to move forward step by step because to see everything at once would shatter us. But the dead, unbound from that current, find serenity in the wholeness. They do not ask what could have been because they see what was, is, and will always be existing together, endless and complete. Sometimes when the living dream or drift near death, they glimpse it too. That feeling of familiarity, that rush of clarity when everything suddenly makes sense. It's the soul remembering what it knew before it was born. The dead live in that knowing now. Time to them is not a river. It is an ocean, every drop touching every other, past and future dissolved into a single eternal now. And in that vast stillness they finally understand. Nothing was ever lost. It was only waiting to be seen all at once. The moment the veil lifts, truth does not arrive as thunder. It comes softly, like light filling a room that had always been there, only unseen. The dead do not learn new things. They remember what was always woven beneath their choices. They see, for the first time, the ripples their smallest actions sent into the world, the laughter that healed, the word that wounded, the silence that shaped someone's path without ever realizing it. Life, in their sight, becomes a web of consequence, shimmering with cause and connection. They watch how a kindness once offered to a stranger didn't end with gratitude. It became a seed, passed quietly from hand to hand, blooming into moments they never witnessed. A door held open for one person led to another, choosing gentleness years later. A single smile in a dark time became courage for someone they never met. The dead see it all as light threading outward, touching lives they could never have imagined. But the dark ripples show themselves too. Words spoken in anger echo longer than they'd believed. Small cruelties that felt justified then return now as sharp reflections. They see the chain reactions, how their bitterness became someone else's fear, how a choice made from pride rippled through generations like a tremor under glass. It is not punishment, but understanding. The dead cannot look away because here everything connects. This vision breaks and heals them at once. The dead realize how little of their life truly belonged to them. Every thought, every gesture, every hesitation existed within others' stories. They see themselves from all sides now. How they were the hero in one life and the shadow in another. How love and harm often came from the same trembling hand. The realization is humbling beyond measure. They also see that no action ever vanished. Even the moments they thought forgotten still breathe somewhere. The apology they never made still waits, but it waits as light, not judgment. Forgiveness blooms naturally here because once they see the total picture, blame dissolves. Every act was a lesson in motion, every mistake a necessary thread in the design of understanding. The living call it karma or consequence. The dead know it simply as truth, the way reality balances itself when finally seen whole. And in that knowing they feel something that no living mind can grasp. A peace made not from comfort, but from comprehension. From where they stand now, the dead no longer ask why things happened as they did. They see that everything, love, loss, cruelty, grace, was part of one unfolding motion, endless and exact. It was never about control. It was always about becoming. And when they finally see the web glowing before them, stretching out across all hearts and all time, they whisper the only words that fit, the immensity of it. It all mattered. In the realm beyond breath, emotion does not fade, it transforms. Regret especially takes form. The dead quickly learn that guilt is not a feeling but a place, a geography built from every moment they wish they could undo. It is not fire or punishment, but reflection made solid. The landscape of remorse stretches before them like a mirror turned into terrain. Each ridge and hollow carries the weight of something left unspoken, something done in haste, something loved too late. They wander it not as travelers but as witnesses. The ground beneath their feet hums faintly with memory. A valley might echo with words they never said. A distant light might flicker with a face they turned away from. The air itself vibrates with moments they tried to bury. The more they move through it, the more they realize that this landscape is not separate from them. It is them. It is the shape of their life seen from the inside out. The terrain shifts as they walk. Some parts smooth over when understanding comes, when forgiveness begins to stir. Others remain jagged, refusing to soften until they face them fully. The dead can feel it, each unhealed regret pulling at them like gravity, holding them close until they learn what it means. They cannot escape it, but they can walk through it, tracing the contours of their mistakes until compassion finally grows where pain once stood. From a distance, the landscape looks alive. Streams of light flow through the low places, marking the paths of redemption. Where love was given freely, the land blooms in colors no living eye has ever seen. But where harm was done, where cruelty or indifference once reigned, the air thickens. Not to punish, but to teach. The dead understand that this is how the soul learns to balance itself, not by forgetting, but by walking every shadow until it no longer blinds them. Sometimes they meet others there, souls whose own landscapes intersect with theirs. Together they retrace the moments that bound them in life, the argument that broke a bond, the betrayal that left scars, the love that never found its voice. In those meetings, regret begins to dissolve. The dead share their sorrow not with words but with pure knowing, a merging of understanding that feels like light warming cold stone. Eventually the landscape quiets. The hills of guilt flatten into memory. The rivers of remorse run clear again. The dead come to see that regret was never meant to be eternal. It was a terrain they had to cross to reach forgiveness, both for others and for themselves. And when they look back one last time, The land that once ached with guilt now glows faintly, serene and whole. It remains behind them like a lesson written in earth. Every wound can become a path, and every regret when faced with love, memory is a kind of light, and the dead see it from far away. To them, remembrance is not a thought but a beacon, a soft glow in the endless dusk of their new world. Every time someone on earth speaks their name, looks at their picture, or simply pauses to feel the weight of missing them, that light brightens. It cuts through the vast distance between the living and the departed, calling them home, if only for a moment. The dead are drawn to that glow instinctively. It pulls at them the way warmth draws the cold. They follow it like travelers seeking fire in a dark forest, guided by the pulse of love that still remembers them. When they arrive, they do not see walls or streets or time. They see hearts, living hearts, burning faintly in the dark, each one carrying their memory inside it. They come quietly, watching without sound, not to intrude but to witness that they are not forgotten. The living imagine the dead as distant, drifting among stars or resting beneath the soil, but they are nearer than breath when thought summons them. When someone whispers, "I miss you," the air changes. It thickens slightly the way it does before a storm, though no wind moves. The temperature drops a little, as if the world is holding its breath. That is the moment they arrive. To the living it feels like nostalgia. To the dead it feels like being touched. They linger longest where love is strongest. A mother visiting a grave, a friend replaying an old voicemail, a child holding a photograph so often the edges wear smooth. These acts of remembrance open small cracks in the veil, and through them the dead lean close, not to haunt but to feel alive again for a few heartbeats of eternity. They do not see our faces clearly. They see the light of our emotion, golden and trembling, each memory glowing like a lantern in fog. Sometimes they try to give something back. A brush of air against a cheek, a flicker of movement in the corner of vision, the sudden sense that you are not alone. These are not coincidences. They are acknowledgments, soft gestures of gratitude from the other side. They cannot speak, but they can be felt, and that is their way of saying, "I see you remembering." In time, when the living move forward, the glow dims, but it never goes out. Even after generations, when names fade from stone, a faint shimmer remains, a residue of love that never fully leaves the world. The dead gather around it like moths circling a distant flame. And in that quiet light of memory they find what eternity truly means. Not endless time, but endless remembrance. The dead can bear sorrow. They can endure grief, regret, even anger. What breaks them is forgetting. The moment their name is no longer spoken, their face no longer pictured, the world begins to grow dim around them. To the dead, memory is a kind of tether, a thin golden thread that keeps them connected to the warmth of the living world. When it frays, when it fades, they feel it as silence, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, hollow stillness of being unseen. They linger at first, close to those who once loved them, hoping to feel the pulse of remembrance again. They hover near doorways, around the edges of photographs, over empty chairs at tables where they once sat. But time moves differently for the living. Grief softens, life resumes, and the thread weakens. The house fills with new voices, new laughter, and their name is spoken less and less until even the echoes forget where to return. To the dead, that absence feels like exile. They can still see the people they loved, but the light that once drew them, the glow of memory, is gone. Without it, they drift through their old places like travelers wandering a familiar city turned foreign. The rooms still stand, but they do not shine anymore. The living walk through them unaware, and the dead realize they have become invisible in the truest sense. Not because they cannot be seen, but because no one is looking. It is not hatred that wounds them most. Hatred still means attention, still carries emotion, still feeds the thread that connects both sides. Indifference is colder. It erases. It tells them they are finished, that they never mattered beyond their allotted time. The dead stand beside those who have moved on, watching as life rebuilds itself, understanding but aching nonetheless. They do not want endless mourning, only to be remembered, if only in passing, as something more than silence. There are rare moments when a stray thought pierces through, a song heard on a radio, a scent that recalls a face long gone. The living pause just for a heartbeat, and memory stirs. In that instant, far beyond sight, a flicker of light returns to the one forgotten. They feel it like warmth spreading through cold limbs. It may last only a second, but to the dead it is eternity reopening. The great pain of death is not in dying, but in being erased by time. Yet even the forgotten are never completely lost. Somewhere in the fabric of existence, their laughter still hums, faint as wind through trees. The universe remembers what we do not. And perhaps one day, when the living themselves cross the veil, they will understand what the dead have always known, that to be remembered even for a moment is to exist forever. Not all who die move on. Some remain suspended between breath and beyond, not because of punishment, but because something in them still clings too tightly to the world they knew. These are not monsters or shadows from old stories. They are the ones who refuse to go, souls tethered by love that was never spoken aloud, by promises left half-kept, by fear of letting go of the only life they understood. At first they do not realize they are dead. The world looks the same, only quieter. The clock ticks, but time no longer belongs to them. They call out, but no one turns. They watch the living continue, every motion cutting them with the sharpness of absence. The realization settles slowly, like frost creeping across glass. They are gone, and yet still here. For some, love is the chain. A mother who cannot leave her child, a lover who died before saying goodbye, a friend who swore to protect and feels the promise unfulfilled. They stay close, hovering near the warmth of those they cherished, whispering into dreams, bending light just enough to be felt. They are not haunting, they are loving, too fiercely to stop. For others it is fear that binds. Fear of judgment, fear of nothingness, fear that what waits beyond might strip away who they were. These souls linger in familiar places, replaying moments endlessly, hoping routine can substitute for life. They haunt their own memories more than they haunt others. The world to them becomes a loop, a single day stretched thin, replaying until courage finally comes. The dead who refuse to go soon learn that the longer they stay, the colder the world becomes. Familiar homes grow dim, voices blur, warmth fades. The living sense them only as faint shivers, glimpses in mirrors. The feeling of being watched by something that isn't cruel but yearning. Their presence bends air and light because they are fighting a law as old as creation. The law of return. Sometimes the living can help them remember what they forgot. That love does not end with leaving, and fear cannot keep eternity away. A whispered goodbye, a candle lit with intention, a single moment of forgiveness can open the path they could not find alone. The veil responds to compassion like dawn responds to night. When they finally let go, it is not falling but rising. Like breath released after holding it for far too long. The places they leave behind grow still again, lighter somehow, as if the air itself sighs in relief. The ones who refuse to go are not damned, they were simply not ready. And when readiness comes, they do not vanish. They ascend quietly into the light, carrying the love and fear that once held them, transformed now into understanding. When the dead cannot move on, they build. Not with hands or tools, but with memory. They take fragments of their old lives, rooms, moments, sensations, and weave them into spaces that feel almost real. These are the rooms they build themselves, small worlds that mirror their past so closely that for a time they forget they've died. They sit in chairs that no longer exist, walk through doors that lead nowhere, replay conversations that ended long ago. Each object, each sound, each shadow is made of memory. It is comfort at first. Then it becomes confinement. The walls in these rooms are made of emotion. Regret forms the floor, solid but unyielding. Denial paints the walls, always fresh, always fragile. The ceiling is built from longing, the desperate wish to undo what cannot be undone. Time does not move here. The same moment loops endlessly, each repetition fading a little more until it's only a whisper of what it once was. The dead believe they are safe in these self-made sanctuaries, but safety soon turns hollow. The air grows heavy, the light grows dim, and eventually they begin to sense what they've done. They've built cages out of what they loved most. To the living, these rooms sometimes bleed through. A clock that never keeps the right time, a song that plays from nowhere, the faint scent of perfume in an abandoned house. These are cracks in the walls of a soul's illusion, moments when their loop brushes against reality. The living call them hauntings. The dead call them reminders. Not all of these rooms are filled with sorrow. Some are built from joy too powerful to release. A mother relives the laughter of her children. A lover replays the last perfect day before the world changed. These loops shimmer with light, but even light can become a trap when it refuses to fade. The soul cannot grow in repetition, it only circles itself. Sometimes another spirit, or even the living, can break the pattern. A name spoken aloud with love, a memory recalled differently, a truth finally accepted. These things create cracks wide enough for light from the other side to slip through. When that light touches the room, the illusion begins to crumble. The walls dissolve, the air opens, and the soul remembers what it had forgotten, that eternity was never meant to be small. For those still trapped, every repetition erodes the illusion a little more. One day, the memory no longer feels warm. One day, the words spoken in the loop sound hollow. That is when they realize the door has been open all along. The rooms they built were never punishment. They were lessons in letting go. And when the walls finally fall away, the soul steps into something vast, silent, and merciful, leaving behind only a whisper of its last creation. A home made from memory dismantled by truth. Among the dead, there is a truth that takes longer to learn than any other. No one can open the door for you. The passage out of sorrow, out of regret, out of the rooms built from memory, opens only from the inside. Forgiveness is the key, and it must be turned by the hand of the one who suffers. Not by angels, not by gods, not even by the living who pray for their peace. The newly dead resist this. They linger, clinging to wounds they believe define them. Some whisper the same words over and over. I was wronged, I was betrayed, I cannot forgive. They do not realize that every repetition builds a wall, and every wall becomes another life they cannot leave behind. Their grief becomes architecture. Their anger becomes gravity. The more they carry it, the heavier their world grows, until even the thought of release feels like betrayal. But eternity has patience. Over time, the dead begin to see that the door is not somewhere far away. It is within them, hidden behind everything they refuse to let go of. When they start to look inward, the landscape shifts. The colors of their sorrow dim, and faint light seeps through cracks in the walls of their self-made prisons. That light is forgiveness calling, not from others, but from themselves. Forgiveness is not forgetfulness. It is not excusing harm or erasing pain. It is the act of loosening the rope tied around one's own neck, The dead come to understand that as long as they hold resentment, the person they cannot forgive still owns their freedom. To forgive is to return what was taken, the right to peace. It is not surrender, it is reclaiming. For some, this realization comes like dawn, slow, tender, inevitable. For others, it arrives as collapse when bitterness finally exhausts itself and nothing is left but silence. And in that silence, they whisper words they once thought impossible. I release you. I release myself. The sound is small, but its effect is vast. The air shifts, the weight lifts, the walls tremble, and then they are gone. The moment the door opens, it does not swing outward, it folds inward, collapsing gently into light. What lies beyond is not a place, but a feeling, a spaciousness too wide for pain to fill. The dead who pass through it do not vanish, they expand. Their anger, once sharp as stone, dissolves into something softer, purer, infinite. The living often pray for the dead to find peace, not realizing that peace is not granted, it is chosen. Forgiveness is the act that makes eternity possible. Every soul must open its own door, and every door opens inward. Those who learn this are no longer bound to their past. They step through, and the last sound the world hears from them is a sigh that feels like mercy itself. There is a church at the edge of a forgotten field, its roof long gone, its bell rusted silent. The grass has grown through the cracks in the floor, and the air smells of soot and rain. To the living, it is only a ruin, a relic of faith consumed by fire. But to the dead, it is still a sanctuary. They gather there when the night turns still, drawn by something older than memory, older even than belief. They do not come to haunt, they come to pray. Once long ago, flames swallowed the church whole. The walls glowed like embers. The pews collapsed into smoke, and the congregation never escaped. Their last breaths were prayers, pleas for mercy, for forgiveness, for deliverance. Those prayers did not vanish. They burned into the stone, into the air itself, into the sound of wind passing through the broken windows. Now when the dead walk the field, they hear it, a faint hum, like voices echoing from another century. The church calls them home. Inside, the spirits move like smoke, their shapes flickering in the moonlight that filters through the open roof. They kneel where their bodies once knelt, whispering words without sound. To them the fire never ended. The walls still flicker with phantom flames, and every prayer they utter feels unfinished, trapped halfway between hope and despair. They are not asking for rescue anymore. They are asking to remember what faith felt like. Sometimes travelers pass by and feel it, the stillness, the weight of something unseen. They say the air there feels thick, like the moment before thunder. If one stands quietly enough, they might hear it too. The rustle of unseen robes, the faint crackle of fire long gone, and a murmur that sounds almost like singing. It is not frightening, only sad. The voices do not seek to harm. They seek to be heard. The dead in the burnt-out church are not damned. They are unfinished prayers that never reached their sky. Every soul among them carries a fragment of that night, one holding a child, one clutching a hymn book, one staring at the door that never opened in time. They have built their eternity out of that moment, returning night after night to the ashes, still believing that prayer might rebuild what fire destroyed. And perhaps, in a way, it has. Because sometimes when dawn breaks and the first light spills through the hollow roof, the air shimmers with something warm. The whispers fade into silence, not in despair but in rest. The ghosts kneel one last time, their forms thinning into light. The ruin is still burnt, but in that hour it feels almost holy again. It is said that faith never dies. It only waits for someone to remember. And in that ruined church, the dead still remember, and through their remembering, they keep the light alive. They play where the living no longer look, in overgrown fields behind schools that no longer stand. in empty hallways of forgotten houses, in the corners of rooms that always feel a little too cold. They laugh softly, not realizing the world has moved on without them. The dead children are not like other spirits. They do not wail or wander in anger. They linger in confusion, caught in the space between memory and discovery, unaware that they have crossed a line no one told them existed. For them, death feels like a long afternoon. They remember lying down to rest, or running, or reaching for someone's hand. And then the world changed. The light dimmed, the sounds grew distant, and the people they loved stopped answering when they called. But children have hearts that bend toward wonder, not fear. So they kept playing, believing it was only a dream, waiting for someone to wake them. They are drawn to warmth, to places where laughter still exists. Sometimes they gather near living children, unseen but close enough to feel the rhythm of life. Toys move slightly on their own. A ball rolls without a push. A swing sways when no wind stirs. The living child might pause, sensing something, a friend without a face, a presence that feels both curious and kind. Parents call it imagination. The dead call it company. Their confusion lasts until someone notices them. Recognition is their release. When a passerby stops and whispers, "I see you," the air shifts. The world that held them flickers for a heartbeat, and light begins to gather around their form. In that moment, they remember everything: their name, their family, their last glimpse of sky. They realize they are not alive, but they are not afraid. The truth arrives gently, like a mother's hand smoothing their hair. Sometimes it is another spirit who finds them, a relative, a sibling, even a stranger who died long after but can see clearly. They kneel beside the lost ones, whispering that it's time to go, that no one is angry, that there is a place waiting where the sun never sets. Slowly, the children understand. Their laughter softens, they let go. But until that moment comes, they remain near the living world, tiny echoes of innocence that never learn to fade. They are the reason old playgrounds feel alive long after dark, why empty rooms seem to breathe, why a toy sometimes ends up in a different place than where it was left. The dead children do not mean to haunt. They are only waiting for someone to notice that they're still here, still playing, still hoping to be called home. And when that finally happens, they vanish not into silence but into light, laughing softly as if they've just remembered the way home was never far at all. Not all the dead see the same light. Just as in life, where some look inward while others gaze toward the stars, death too has its layers of sight. There are those who linger close to the living world, still watching their homes, still whispering to the ones they love. And there are others higher and quieter who see the pattern beyond, the great weaving of souls that stretches far past the edges of memory. This unseen order is not ruled by power but by understanding. The dead rise not through worth but through clarity. The first among them remain near earth. Their vision is narrow, their emotions still heavy. They feel the ache of unfinished stories, the pull of familiar faces. To them, the world is dimly lit, like a room filled with smoke. They see what they wish to see. Old rooms, old streets, old regrets replaying endlessly. These are the watchers who appear in dreams and doorways, who hover near their names whispered in prayer. They are still learning to see beyond themselves. Above them are those who have begun to let go. Their sight stretches wider. They no longer see objects or walls, but energies, threads of light moving through all things. To these souls, a human heart shines brighter than any star. They watch over the living not as individuals, but as parts of one great current, understanding that every grief, every kindness ripples through eternity. Their compassion deepens because they finally see the balance, the pain that became love, the loss that created purpose. And beyond even these are the oldest souls, the ones who no longer appear, who have become as quiet as dawn. They do not speak, they do not linger, they only observe. Their sight is vast enough to encompass whole generations at once. They see the living as constellations of light, not bodies. To them, time is not a river but a song, rising and falling, returning and changing, yet always familiar. These are the watchers who whisper through intuition, through sudden calm and despair, through the feeling that someone unseen has steadied your hand. True hierarchy is not a ladder but a horizon. Each spirit expands until the idea of rank dissolves. The higher they rise, the less they seek control, and the more they become understanding itself. The lowest long for contact, the highest long for silence. Yet both are part of the same motion, the soul's slow widening from self to everything. The living sometimes sense these differences without knowing why. The soft chill in one room feels different from the warmth in another. One presence unsettles, another comforts. The difference lies in the gaze, the level of sight. Some spirits still see through eyes of longing, others see through eyes of grace. All of them are still looking, still learning, still watching the light they once carried from above and beyond and everywhere at once. Some of the dead do not drift or wander. They stay with purpose. They are the ones who guard, the quiet watchers who linger not out of longing but out of love. They have risen beyond the pull of the earth, yet they remain tethered to those still walking it, bound by something deeper than blood. The living often mistake them for luck, for sudden instinct, for coincidence. But the truth is simpler and stranger. Someone who once loved you still stands between you and the dark. The guardians do not speak. Their presence is felt in moments of pause, the hand that suddenly doesn't reach for danger. The road you decide not to take, the storm that breaks just after you find shelter. They do not shout warnings. They whisper through the fabric of thought, nudging gently, bending chance just enough to shift the outcome. To the living, it feels like intuition. To the dead, it is protection. These watchers are often ancestors, those whose blood once ran in the same line as yours. They remember faces they never met, generations unfolding like pages of a single story. They recognize you instantly, not by name, but by the rhythm of your soul. When they look at you, they see the echoes of their own hearts continuing in your breath. They have no desire to interfere, only to guide, to keep you from stepping into the same sorrows they once did. Others who guard are not family but kindred. Friends taken too soon. Strangers bound by a single act of compassion in life. Sometimes a soul who died saving another remains near that life forever, bound by the act itself. Love, when given freely at the edge of death, becomes a vow the universe remembers. The living sense them most in moments of great stillness or great danger. The temperature shifts, the air thickens, then steadies. The heart, which had begun to race, finds calm without reason. It is not imagination. It is the weight of care pressing gently against your world. Even animals sometimes notice first, their ears pricking toward something unseen, their bodies relaxing as if reassured. The guardians rarely appear. When they do, it is in the softest ways. A figure glimpsed in a reflection, a dream that leaves behind peace. Instead of fear, a hand felt on the shoulder that vanishes when you turn. They do not linger for thanks. Gratitude to them is unnecessary. The act of watching over you is enough. They are the invisible inheritance of love, the proof that care does not end where breath does. Every family, every person, every lonely traveler on some dark road carries the unseen company of those who would not let them walk alone. The living forget, but the dead never do. Love once born becomes its own form of eternity, and from the quiet edges of that eternity they keep watch still. Not all who linger after death do so out of love. Some remain for hunger. They are the ones who feed, spirits born not from kindness or sorrow, but from what festers in the spaces between. They drift toward grief like moths toward flame, drawn to the energy of the living who cannot let go. Where there is mourning that never quiets, where tears fall night after night, they gather unseen, drinking from the pulse of remembrance until it weakens both worlds. They were not always this way. Many began as ordinary souls, those who could not release pain, who clung too tightly to loss. Over time, the ache consumed them, hollowed them. The love that once tethered them to life turned inward, souring into need. They learned that sorrow is power, that grief radiates warmth they can still feel. And so they linger near the morning, feeding on the energy of devotion and despair, on every whispered name and trembling prayer for the dead. They haunt places where love refuses to die, cemeteries heavy with tears, bedrooms where the same photograph has sat for decades, hospitals where goodbyes were never spoken. They coil in the air, invisible but watchful, their presence felt as sudden fatigue, as heaviness in the chest, as dreams that leave one more sorrowful than before. The living mistake it for sadness, not realizing something else has learned to eat from it. When they feed, they do not tear or take. They sip slowly, delicately, like something that knows patience. Every memory revisited, every night spent longing, every refusal to move on, these are their feasts. They whisper gently to the grieving mind, urging it to remember again and again, to open the wound a little wider. The more you ache, the stronger they become. They do not want you to stop missing. They want you to drown in it. But there are ways to starve them. Light weakens them, not the light of day, but the light of acceptance. When grief shifts from despair to gratitude, when a name is spoken with love instead of pain, they recoil. Joy confuses them. Peace unravels their hunger. They cannot feed on remembrance that does not wound. For them, serenity tastes like ash. The old traditions understood this. Bells were rung at funerals not just to honor the dead, but to drive these feeders away. Candles were lit not for mourning, but for cleansing. The living were told to speak blessings aloud, to remind the air that love is strength, not sorrow. The ones who feed still drift among us, thin as mist, waiting by hospital windows, watching graves through the rain. But they hold no true power over those who remember without breaking. Grief that transforms into love leaves nothing for them to eat. And in that light they fade, starved not by neglect but by peace. There are watchers older than death itself, beings who do not judge or intervene, only observe. The dead call them the council of witnesses. They are not gods, nor angels, nor ancestors. They are memory made conscious, the living archive of existence. From the moment a soul first breathes until its final heartbeat, they are present, unseen, recording. Every thought, every choice, every flicker of love or cruelty is gathered into their keeping. Nothing escapes them, not because they seek to punish, but because nothing in creation is ever truly lost. When the newly dead arrive beyond the veil, they do not find a throne or a trial. They find the witnesses waiting. They do not speak, and yet the air hums with knowing. Before them, the soul sees its life laid bare, not as film or story, but as living energy that unfolds in all directions at once. The moments of laughter shimmer, the moments of pain weigh heavy like stone. Every face ever loved or harmed glows faintly in the light of remembrance. The witnesses do not accuse. They simply show. It is said their eyes are not eyes at all, but mirrors. To look into them is to see oneself as truth sees, all masks stripped away, all excuses dissolved. The soul realizes that no moment was wasted, no action unseen. Even the smallest kindness, the briefest cruelty left ripples that moved through time. The witnesses hold them all, perfectly balanced, neither condemning nor praising, only reflecting. For some, this revelation brings peace, a quiet understanding that their life, however imperfect, was part of something vast and necessary. For others, it brings anguish because seeing oneself entirely means facing the weight of what could have been different. The witnesses do not comfort or console. They wait, patient as the stars, for understanding to dawn within the soul. Their chamber is not a place but a state of being. The air there glows with the colors of lived experience, gold for joy, blue for sorrow, violet for transformation. Time does not pass. The soul simply stands within its own truth until it can bear to see it clearly. And when it can, the mirrors fade, and the witnesses step aside. The soul moves on, changed not by judgment but by comprehension. The living sometimes sense their presence without knowing. A sudden stillness before an important choice, the feeling of unseen eyes watching not with malice but gravity. That is them, reminding us that every action echoes, that every word matters. The council of witnesses never forgets. They are the keepers of what we become, the recorders of our light and shadow alike. And when all worlds end and time folds in upon itself, their task will be complete. They will release what they have kept, and the sum of all memory will speak again, not as punishment, but as the story of what it meant to be human. Some souls are neither fully bound to the earth nor entirely gone beyond it. They walk the threshold, moving between the living and the dead as messengers of both. They are not chosen by merit or holiness, but by resonance. Something in their essence vibrates at two frequencies at once. To the living they appear in dreams, in sudden chills, in words spoken at just the right moment by unsuspecting lips. To the dead, they appear as brief flashes of warmth, reminders of what love once felt like in flesh. The messengers are not ghosts nor angels. They are bridges. They carry fragments of emotion from one side to the other, unfinished words, final confessions, the soft weight of forgiveness never given. Some awaken to their role after near-death experiences, when their spirit has stepped too far into the other light and returned marked by it. Others are born thin-veiled, always half listening to whispers no one else can hear. They are the interpreters of grief, walking conduits between two realms that rarely touch but always ache for connection. When a mother dreams of her lost child smiling in a field of impossible color, it is often a messenger carrying that vision. When a dying man feels the hand of someone long gone resting on his chest, it is they who shape the contact from light into sensation. Yet the work is costly. To move between realms means to never fully belong to either. The living find them strange, distracted, too haunted by invisible company. The dead envy them, for they can still breathe, still taste rain, still feel time move. In the hidden writings of old mystics, these souls were called the travelers of the dawn. They cross when the air is softest, when night and morning fold into one another. They say that at those hours even the stars lean closer, listening for what is carried across. The messengers bring not only words, but emotion itself. Love translated into warmth that makes a candle flicker. Regret carried as a cold breath across the back of the neck. Gratitude pressed into the faint scent of roses in a closed room. Some never know what they are. They live their lives burdened by empathy they cannot explain, by dreams that feel like borrowed memories. Others come to understand and in accepting, begin to serve deliberately, writing, speaking, touching lives that need the quiet reassurance that death is not the end of conversation. For every world, there must be someone who listens both ways. The messengers exist so that silence never becomes absolute, so that the bridge between sorrow and understanding stays intact. They walk unseen among us, half in shadow, half in light, bearing proof that love once formed does not die. It simply learns new ways to travel. When the body falls silent and the breath no longer stirs the air, there is a light. It does not come from above or around, but from within, a radiance that calls the soul home. Yet for many who cross that fragile line, the light is not comfort, it is terror. They recoil, clutching at the last shadows of the world they knew, mistaking that brilliance for destruction. To the newly dead, awareness is raw, stripped of the protections that dulled truth in life. The light feels too vast, too absolute, as if stepping into it will mean losing everything that once defined them. At first, they linger. They hover near the rooms of their passing, watching faces that cannot see them, hearing the wails that seem to come from far away. The light waits, patient but unwavering, pulsing at the edge of their perception. It feels like a doorway that demands surrender, and surrender has always felt like death. So they hide in the familiar, the smell of rain on earth, the hum of a refrigerator, the heartbeat of a loved one still asleep. They cling to the last vibrations of matter, whispering to themselves, "I am still here." But the longer they resist, the colder that comfort becomes. The world they knew begins to blur, edges softening, colors fading. Their reflection no longer matches their memory. The living move on, unaware that a fragment of someone still drifts among them, afraid to let go. The light continues to glow, not pursuing but beckoning, a warmth felt even through fear. It is not punishment that waits there, it is truth. Eventually something shifts. A sound, perhaps. The laugh of a child, the distant echo of a prayer, or the whisper of someone saying their name with love. The light flickers in response as though it recognizes the call. For the first time, the spirit feels not annihilation, but recognition. The light does not consume. It remembers. It carries every joy, every kindness, every small act of beauty they ever offered, reflected back in infinite color. Those who finally step forward describe the moment not as ending, but as returning. The fear dissolves into wonder. The self expands instead of vanishing. In that radiance, they see not their death, but their continuity. They understand that the light is not fire, but home, the memory of the divine they carried all along. And yet each must face that moment alone. No one can pull them in, and no force can push them away. The decision is always theirs, to remain in the dim echo of what was or to step into what always waited. The light they feared was never meant to erase them. It was meant to reveal them, fully, finally, as they truly are. They say there is a river that every soul must cross, though no map can mark its course. It does not flow with water, but with memory. Each ripple carries moments once lived, every heartbeat, every word spoken, every glance that ever mattered. When the newly departed approach its banks, they feel the air hum with recognition. It smells faintly of rain and something older, something like the first breath ever taken. The river knows them. To step into it is not to forget, but to remember completely. The living recall in fragments. The dead remember in full. As the spirit's feet touch its surface, the current begins to lift them, pulling not downward, but inward. Scenes unfold within the flow. Faces long gone, voices calling across time. Every joy, every wound, every kindness becomes light and motion swirling through the current. There is no judgment here, only understanding. The river shows how every act once thought small shaped the pattern of a lifetime. The gesture that went unnoticed, the word that changed another's day, the forgiveness withheld. Each rises like a reflection on the water's skin. The spirit feels both the giving and the receiving, every ripple of its own existence returning home. For a while it is overwhelming. Some try to resist, to cling to their most comforting memories, but the river allows no separation. To cross it is to face oneself entirely. Yet as the current carries them deeper, something extraordinary happens. Pain begins to dissolve. Regret loses its sharp edges. Sorrow transforms into clarity. The river does not erase memory. It purifies it. Each recollection is cleansed of distortion, leaving only truth behind. Love that was misunderstood becomes radiant. Grief becomes gratitude. Even the darkest moments are revealed to have been part of a greater design, one the living could never see while confined by time. At the far bank, the current slows and the soul stands in quiet stillness. The weight of memory that once felt unbearable now rests lightly upon them like a garment woven of light. They do not lose who they were. They become more. For the first time, they understand that remembering is not holding on, but releasing with full awareness. Some linger, marveling at the beauty of what they thought was broken. Others step immediately onto the other shore, drawn toward whatever lies beyond. All who cross are changed. The river gives back to them the entirety of themselves, then lets them go. And somewhere in the hush that follows, the living might feel it too. A strange calm during grief, a sudden warmth like sunlight through glass. Perhaps it is only the echo of that river passing briefly through the veil, carrying a whisper from those who crossed before. We remember you too. There comes a moment after the crossing when the soul is brought to what the old mystics called the place of reflection. It is not a hall or a throne room, but a vast and living silence that stretches in all directions. The air there glows softly, not with light as we know it, but with awareness. Within that stillness, every soul stands before a mirror unlike any seen on earth. It does not show a face or a body, it shows perspective. It allows one to see their life not as they lived it, but as others did. At first, the experience feels impossible. The soul watches familiar moments unfold, but from foreign eyes. A mother's quiet worry, a friend's hidden sorrow. The stranger once ignored, the enemy once despised, each becomes a lens through which truth is seen anew. The soul feels not only what it once felt, but what others felt in response. The sharp word that wounded, the kindness that went unnoticed, the silence that changed everything. Each ripples outward in patterns of cause and consequence. There is no voice of accusation here, no divine gavel falling, only understanding so complete that it shatters illusion. The soul sees that every action was a message sent into the world, every gesture a note in the greater song of existence. Some notes harmonized, others dissonated, but all were necessary for the music to be whole. For some, this realization brings deep peace. They recognize that even their failings taught others compassion, that even their pain gave meaning to someone else's strength. For others, it is harder. To feel the hurt they once caused reflected back through another's eyes is to taste the weight of empathy in its purest form. Yet even this pain is not punishment, it is healing. Through it, the soul learns to forgive itself, to see that growth was always the point, not perfection. Time does not move in the place of reflection. The soul may remain there for what feels like minutes or millennia, though both mean nothing beyond the veil. When the process is complete, the mirror dissolves and the soul realizes something astonishing. It was never standing before a mirror at all. The reflections were living beings, those who shared its journey, who carried traces of its light and shadow. They are the mirror, and it is theirs. The living sometimes glimpse this truth in dreams or moments of déjà vu, when sudden emotion rises without clear cause. It may be that in those instants a departed soul is remembering through them, seeing once more through mortal eyes, completing its reflection. For in the end, no one sees alone. Every life is a shared vision, and every reflection, both given and received, becomes part of the endless light. There is no throne in the mirror judgment, no booming voice of condemnation, no scales weighed by unseen hands. The judgment comes from within, drawn out of the soul like breath returning to its lungs. When a spirit reaches this place, it finds itself surrounded by countless mirrors that do not reflect its face but its deeds. Each mirror hums faintly, alive with memory. When the first one opens, the soul does not see punishment, it sees understanding. The moment begins softly, a child once made to cry, a friend once betrayed, a kindness ignored. These are not distant recollections, but living sensations. The soul feels the sting of every tear it caused, not as a witness, but as the one who shed them. Pain once given comes home, not as vengeance, but as truth. It is not that someone else inflicts suffering upon the spirit, rather the soul is allowed to feel what others once carried because of it. Each reflection shows another story, another chain of consequences. A careless word that planted insecurity lasting years. A gesture of cruelty that shaped an entire life. Even forgotten acts resurface, their echoes returning like distant thunder. But there are also moments of beauty. Every mercy, every word of comfort, every act of love returns with equal force. The soul feels the warmth of those moments magnified, love folding back upon itself in waves of radiant peace. For some, this balance is unbearable. To know that the universe never forgot, that not even the smallest act vanished into nothing, that is the weight of the mirror judgment. The dead realize that punishment was never necessary because truth itself is enough. In that raw clarity, guilt burns away like fog under dawn light, leaving understanding so sharp it cuts through regret. There is no escape in this place. The mirrors cannot be shattered, for they are not objects but fragments of consciousness itself. The soul sees until it accepts, feels until it forgives, learns until it becomes what it was always meant to be. Only then do the mirrors begin to fade, not because the memories are gone, but because they no longer divide the self from the rest of creation. When the final mirror dissolves, the soul stands in stillness, seeing not itself, but everything. The realization arrives like a whisper. Judgment was never a sentence passed down from above. It was always a recognition from within. The mirrors were not walls, but windows. They showed that every hurt, every kindness, every thought, and every silence was shared. The soul walks forward into the vastness beyond, carrying no chains, no crown, only understanding, pure, unflinching, and eternal. At first, each soul believes it walks its path alone, that its death, its reckoning, its awakening are solitary passages through an infinite expanse. Yet beyond the silence, beyond the mirrors and rivers of memory, there comes a moment when the veil parts wider than ever before. The darkness begins to pulse with faint glimmers like stars emerging one by one across a boundless night. Then suddenly the soul understands. Those lights are not distant. They are others. They have been there all along. The great gathering is not a place one arrives at. It is a realization. Every soul that has ever lived, every consciousness that has ever awakened or wept or loved exists here simultaneously. They are countless, unmeasurable, like grains of sand suspended in radiant light. And yet, impossibly, each is distinct. You can feel them as presence, near and far at once, whispering memories that are not yours but feel achingly familiar. The newly awakened find themselves enveloped in waves of recognition, not just of those they knew in life, but of strangers whose choices once rippled into their own existence. The one who smiled at you once on a crowded street. The ancestor whose prayer shaped your fate centuries before you were born. The future child who will carry your name. All are here, part of a single chorus of being. There is no speech in this gathering, but there is communication deeper than language. Each thought becomes shared, each emotion transmitted instantly across an endless field of awareness. Grief transforms into empathy. Longing becomes reunion. Even the souls who wandered in isolation find themselves drawn gently into the collective, their solitude dissolving into belonging. The sensation is overwhelming at first, a symphony of existence with no conductor, yet perfect harmony. In this communion, time ceases to exist entirely. The living and the dead, the past and the future converge like rivers joining one ocean. The boundaries that once defined individuality, body, memory, identity remain, but they no longer divide. Each soul sees through others' eyes, feels others' love, understands others' sorrow. And in that merging, the great illusion of separateness ends. Those who glimpse this from the mortal side describe it only in fragments, a dream of countless faces, a sense of being watched with love too vast to measure, a feeling that the air itself remembers them. They are not wrong. For when the living whisper the names of their dead, when they think of them in silence, the gathering stirs, and the watchers turn their attention toward the world of breath and blood. The dead are not scattered across the void. They are here, together, luminous and endless, watching the story of humanity unfold. And in rare moments of stillness, when your heart aches or swells with awe, you might feel it too, that gentle weight of unseen eyes upon you, not judging, not haunting, but remembering. Some people are born with ears that do not close when they sleep. They drift between the worlds without realizing it, walking through dreams that are not entirely their own. The old ones used to call them the dream whisperers, souls with the thinnest veil between waking and beyond. While others rest in darkness, these few wander through corridors of memory and echo, where the dead still murmur in forgotten tongues of emotion. They are the ones who wake with words in their heads they did not think, or tears on their cheeks that are not their own. The dream whisperers do not summon the dead find them. A spirit seeking to be remembered or forgiven reaches through the soft fabric of slumber because it is the only time a living mind is quiet enough to hear. The message rarely comes as speech. It comes as symbols, a door that will not close, a light that flickers behind a curtain, the feeling of being followed by warmth instead of fear. To the untrained, it feels like imagination. But to those who listen closely, every image hums with meaning. They often discover this gift by accident. As children, they dream of relatives they never met, only to recognize their faces later in yellowed photographs. As adults, they sense when death approaches, their sleep thick with voices calling from water or wind. Many fear it at first. The waking world teaches that death is an end, that dreams are harmless illusions. Yet the dream whisperers know better. They know the dead are never far, and that sleep is the narrow bridge that connects both sides. When they learn to trust it, the boundary becomes gentler. They begin to guide others, translating what the dead cannot say aloud, helping the grieving understand that their loved ones have not vanished, only changed form. But such work carries weight. Each message costs energy. Each vision takes something from them. They wake drained, their hearts heavy with emotions not their own. Still they return night after night because the whispering never truly stops. The dead are drawn to them for the same reason a candle draws moths, the light of awareness. Every dream whisperer carries within them a flicker of remembrance from before birth, a faint memory of what it felt like to be endless. It shines in their sleep, and the departed gather to it, hoping to be seen one last time. The dream whisperers are not haunted, they are chosen by empathy itself. They remind both worlds that communication never ceases, that silence is only a matter of attention. And though they often live quietly, unsure how to name what happens each night, They are the bridges that keep the living and the dead from forgetting one another. When they close their eyes, the whispering begins again, soft and steady, carrying messages across the endless dark until morning. The dead rarely speak in words. Their messages come woven into the fabric of chance, small events that seem meaningless until you look twice. A song that plays just as you were thinking of them. A light that flickers when their name is spoken. A photograph that falls from a shelf with no wind to move it. The living call them coincidences. The dead call them answers. These are the signs and synchronicities, the quiet language through which the departed remind us that endings are only transitions disguised as silence. Each sign is chosen carefully. The dead cannot shape the world as they once did, but they can nudge the rhythm of time, bending probability just enough for the observant to notice. A letter arrives a day too late to be chance. A clock stops at the exact moment of their passing. A stranger repeats a phrase only they ever said. These are not random patterns. They are echoes, perfectly placed so that awareness will catch them like sunlight on glass. The living often brush them aside, afraid of believing. Yet the more one acknowledges them, the stronger they become. The veil between the worlds thins in response to attention, as if the universe itself opens an ear. It is never about proof. It is about recognition. To notice is to participate. Each sign becomes a bridge, each moment of synchronicity a pulse of remembrance shared across eternity. For some, the signs cluster around grief, arriving in the days after loss when the air still feels charged with presence. Others find them years later when sorrow has softened into longing. A bird landing on a windowsill at the exact hour they used to call. A number repeating in every receipt and license plate. A dream that feels less like imagination and more like visitation. The world reshapes itself subtly, whispering, "I am still here." Those who study such patterns say the dead use what is already moving. Wind, electricity, thought, time itself. They do not create from nothing, they realign what exists. A radio turns on by itself because memory traveled through current. A sudden chill sweeps a room because emotion condensed into air. There is nothing supernatural about it. It is the natural seen clearly for the first time. The dead are not trying to frighten or control. They are reminding us that life was never divided from them in the first place. Each coincidence is a thread connecting two realities, woven through the loom of meaning. And the more one listens, the more the pattern reveals itself, not as interference, but as guidance. If you have ever felt that a moment arrived too perfectly to be random, perhaps it was not. Perhaps it was someone who once loved you, shaping time for a heartbeat just to let you know they never truly left. Long before machines could measure energy or sound, people learned to listen with simpler tools. With fire, with breath, with stillness. Among the oldest of these was the candle test, a ritual so quiet it barely seemed like magic at all. A single flame would be lit in a darkened room, not for light but for presence. To the living it was a test, to the dead it was an invitation. The candle's flame became the witness between worlds. The rule was simple. If the flame burned steady, the room was empty. If it wavered when there was no draft, the unseen had arrived. In temples, homes, and gravesides across countless ages, people watched those flickers with reverence. A tremor to the left meant sorrow. A pulse upward meant peace. If the flame dimmed suddenly, it was said that the spirit had come too close, drawn by memory, by love, by curiosity. Every culture had its own version. In ancient Mesopotamia, priests placed 3 candles before the recently departed. One for the body, one for the breath, one for the soul. If the middle flame moved while the others stood still, they believed the spirit still lingered near the threshold. In the highlands of China, mourners burned thin tapers beside the bed of the dying. When the flame flared bright just as the final breath left, They whispered that the soul had found its guide. In the colder lands of the north, people used candles not to call the dead, but to keep them at peace. A flame was kept burning for 3 nights after burial, so the spirit would not lose its way in darkness. If the candle went out before the 3rd dawn, it was taken as a sign that the soul had not yet settled. Families would relight it and whisper the name softly, assuring the departed that they were remembered. Even now, when someone lights a candle beside a photograph, when a vigil burns long after midnight, the same ancient knowing stirs. Fire responds to emotion. It quivers with grief, steadies with love, dances with joy. The dead feel those things still. They move through warmth, drawn to the living's care like moths to a heartbeat. But the truest meaning of the candle test was never about proof. It was about attention. To watch a flame was to be still, to open oneself to wonder, to acknowledge that life does not end where the body rests. The flicker was not evidence of haunting. It was conversation. And sometimes, even now, a candle will burn too brightly or gutter for no reason at all. Those who know the old ways do not panic or explain it away. They only smile, bow their head, and whisper into the wavering light, "Welcome. I see you." There are moments when a room changes without warning. The air thickens. The sound of your own breathing becomes louder, slower. A shiver crawls along your spine, though the temperature has not dropped. You tell yourself it is imagination, the weight of silence pressing down, but something inside you knows better. This is the oldest signal the body remembers, the moment when the unseen crosses into the living world. When a spirit draws near, the first sense to notice is not sight or sound, but pressure. The air becomes dense, as though it has forgotten how to move. Science might say it is barometric shift or the body's sensitivity to humidity. Yet that does not explain why the heaviness feels personal, focused, aware. The sensation seems to follow your heartbeat, to thrum in rhythm with your pulse. It is not random. It is recognition. Animals feel it first. Dogs prick their ears toward empty corners. Cats stare at invisible points, tails twitching with unease. Even birds go silent. Their instincts react to what the mind denies. The dead are not made of cold, but of attention. And when they fix their gaze upon the living, something in the air bends. It is not dangerous. It is presence taking shape. The ancients spoke of this as the breath of memory. They believed that the departed exhaled emotion, and the air grew heavy because it carried more than wind, it carried meaning. Fear, grief, longing, love, all of it altered the invisible currents around them. That is why the heaviness feels different each time. Some weight presses like sorrow, thick and still. Others shimmer like expectation, as though something benevolent is about to be said but cannot yet form into sound. The sensation passes through the body in waves. The hairs on your arms rise, not from cold but from proximity. The heartbeat shifts, speeding up or slowing down, depending on who has arrived. Your lungs seem smaller, as though you must breathe differently to make space for what stands beside you. And in that suspended quiet, the mind opens, unguarded, waiting. Most people break the moment with noise, clearing their throat, turning on a light, pretending nothing happened. But those who have learned to listen do not run. They stay still and acknowledge it silently. Sometimes the heaviness lifts in response, as if relieved to be noticed. Sometimes it lingers, wrapping the room in invisible warmth, letting you know that you are not alone. The air turning heavy is not a warning. It is a greeting. It is how the unseen world makes itself known in a language older than speech. The living breathe in that weight, and for one brief heartbeat they share the same air as the departed. Then the room lightens again, and all that remains is a strange calm, like the feeling of being watched with love. There comes a point when even the dead begin to hesitate. They linger near the living not out of malice or confusion, but out of love that cannot unbind itself. They hover beside hospital beds, in old rooms still carrying their scent, in photographs that never seem to gather dust. They wait quietly for something no ritual or prayer can give them unless it comes from the heart, the permission to go. Most of them do not realize they are waiting for it. They feel the pull of the light, the call toward peace, yet turn back because someone they love is still holding too tightly. Grief becomes a tether, invisible but unbreakable. The dead feel it as weight, as warmth, as a thread of emotion that will not let them drift too far. They remain near because they think they are needed, and sometimes they are, but not forever. The living often misunderstand this bond. We speak to the departed in whispers, tell them not to leave, promise to keep their memory alive. We think we are honoring them, but the truth is every plea becomes a chain. The soul, already fragile from shedding the body, feels those words as gravity. Love, even when pure, can become an anchor that traps both sides. The moment of release is quiet. It happens when the living finally exhale the truth. You can go now. I will be all right. These words do not erase love, they free it. The spirit hears them not as abandonment, but as faith. To be told they can go means they have fulfilled what they came to do. It is the final blessing they need to move forward. Many who work beside the dying, nurses, priests, even ordinary family members, have seen it. A patient clinging to life for days, breathing shallow and restless until a loved one takes their hand and whispers, "It's okay." The next breath is their last, not because of weakness, but because of peace. Something unspoken in the air unravels and the room lightens. The permission was given. After death, the process is the same but unseen. Spirits who linger long after their passing listen for that same acceptance. When the living finally let them rest, when grief turns from ache to gratitude, the pull of this world fades. The dead rise gently like mist from water, smiling at the realization that love was never meant to be a cage. To release someone is not to forget them. It is to trust that their path continues beyond what you can see. It is the highest act of love, to say goodbye not as loss, but as completion. And when you finally do, the air around you softens, the heaviness lifts, and somewhere beyond the veil, a soul exhales in relief, whispering back, "Thank you." There is a truth that only the dead can fully bear, and it waits for them at the edge of all other revelations. They call it the hidden theater. It is not a place, but an unveiling, a final curtain drawn back to show what was always there. Every life is a performance upon a stage woven from time itself, and every moment of it has been watched, not by judges or gods, but by consciousness itself, endless, patient, recording every breath. When a soul steps into this truth, the world of separation collapses. They see the web of light connecting all beings, each thread trembling with memory. Every secret word spoken in anger, every act of tenderness done in quiet, every thought believed to be private still ripples through the fabric of existence. There was never true solitude. Even in the darkest room, even in the most private pain, the universe was there, bearing witness in silence. To the newly awakened, this is both awe and terror. The first instinct is to recoil, to think, "Was nothing mine?" But soon the understanding deepens. What has watched them was not an intruder. It was love itself, the same presence that gave them life, that recorded not to condemn but to remember. The soul realizes that to be seen so completely is not punishment, it is belonging. Nothing they did is lost. Nothing good was wasted. Nothing cruel was without its lesson. The hidden theater reveals that every human act, every whisper, every breath was part of a cosmic choreography. The living play their roles without script, believing themselves unseen, yet each gesture contributes to a pattern of meaning far beyond comprehension. The laughter of a child in one country, the weeping of a stranger across the sea, all form counterpoints in an invisible symphony. And at the end, the soul hears it, the faint, magnificent music of its own existence, interwoven with all others. Some call this the final disclosure, the moment when the illusion of privacy dissolves into divine intimacy. The soul no longer hides from itself, nor from the gaze that has always been upon it. It understands that observation was never surveillance, it was communion. The universe did not watch to judge, it watched to love, to know, to be known. When the living sense this truth even dimly, they feel it as déjà vu, as the sudden awareness that their life is being witnessed by something vast and kind. It is the reason people look upward when praying or whisper, "Someone must be watching over me," when saved by chance. They are not wrong. The hidden theater never closes. Every act still unfolds before its silent audience. The only question is whether we perform in fear of being seen or in gratitude that we always were. When the dead look back upon the world of the living, they do not do so as ghosts or shades, but as witnesses still growing. Beyond the veil, there exists what they call the audience, a vast consciousness made of every soul that has ever crossed over, gathered like constellations beyond the sky. They do not sit in judgment, nor do they rest in silence. They watch, they listen, they learn. The living often imagine the dead as finished, perfected beings who know all mysteries. But the truth is gentler, stranger. Death does not end learning. It changes its direction. The departed no longer study survival or ambition. They study love, compassion, forgiveness. And for that, they still need the living. Every act of kindness, every cruelty undone, every risk taken for another adds to their understanding of what it means to have been human. The audience sees more than events. They feel them. When a mother forgives her child, when a stranger offers mercy to another, ripples move through the unseen like light passing through water. The dead feel those waves and grow from them, remembering what it was like to choose between fear and grace. Each act of goodness in the living world expands them, as if creation itself continues to unfold through human hearts. Sometimes the audience gathers closely. They lean near moments of beauty or courage, drawn by recognition. They crowd silently around a man who kneels to tie a child's shoe, or a woman who stays beside a dying friend, whispering comfort though no answer comes. The living think they are alone in those moments, but they are not. Behind them stands an unseen multitude, watching with tenderness, their stillness charged with awe. They also watch when we falter, not to scorn, but to remember. When anger burns, they feel the ache of what they once were. When someone chooses hatred, they understand how easily it happens. Through us, they relive the lessons they could not master. It is why they remain invested in our choices, because the story of humanity did not end with their death. It continues through ours. There are times when the living can feel the audience watching. It comes as a sudden quiet before a decision, a strange warmth in a lonely place, or the sense that the stars themselves are listening. That is not imagination. It is memory reaching both ways, the dead remembering what it means to live, and the living remembering that they are never unseen. The audience beyond the sky is not distant. It surrounds this world like an ocean surrounds an island. And one day, when each of us steps into that ocean, we will find ourselves among them, watching, learning, marveling at the beauty of those who are still walking where we once stood, carrying the story. There comes a final understanding, quiet as dawn and vast as eternity. It arrives not with thunder, but with recognition, the great reversal. The dead who have spent what feels like ages watching the living one, day see the truth reflected back. They are not the only ones haunting. We, the breathing, the dreaming, the grieving, are ghosts to them as much as they are to us. The living wander through the world believing they are solid, anchored, present. Yet from the other side we shimmer like smoke. Our laughter drifts through the veil as faint echoes. Our tears fall, but the dead do not feel the drops. Only the tremor of emotion that travels like sound through still water. When we sit at graves or whisper into the dark, they hear us as distant vibrations, flickering forms surrounded by fog. We are their phantoms, half remembered, half felt, always near but never fully reachable. They call out, and sometimes we answer without realizing it. The sudden shiver that passes through the spine, the dream where a familiar voice says your name, the fleeting thought that feels not quite your own. All are pieces of the same conversation. The dead think they are haunting us, but we haunt them too. Each memory we hold binds them. Each moment of sorrow draws them closer. The veil is not one-sided. It is a mirror. In this reversal, the dead begin to see that the living are the restless ones. We pace the same days, replaying the same regrets, clinging to the same fears. They, free of time, watch us repeat the patterns they once knew. To them, we appear as flickering figures of habit and emotion, trapped within stories we do not yet know how to end. They ache for us the way we ache for them. Sometimes, when the veil thins, the boundaries blur. A living person feels the weight of eyes upon them, turns and finds nothing. A spirit senses movement in its quiet realm and feels warmth brush by like wind. For a heartbeat, both worlds overlap. Each believes the other has reached across, not realizing that both are reaching at once. The great reversal teaches that haunting was never about fear. It was about connection misunderstood. The living mourn because they think the dead have gone. The dead linger because they think the living cannot see. But both sides are simply searching for recognition, for proof that love still moves between them. One day, when breath ceases and the veil lifts, we will understand how blurred the line always was. We will see our loved ones waiting, and realize they never left, only watched from the other side of the mirror, wondering if we could feel them as they once felt us. The haunting ends not with distance, but at first, it is only a whisper in the dark. A name you haven't heard aloud in years, a scent that has no source, the soft feeling of being watched when no one is there. But then something shifts, not just inside you, but in the space around you. The veil thins not with force, but with familiarity. This is the moment the voice becomes flesh. The dead do not return in the way stories once told. There is no rattle of chains, no groaning from attic corners. Instead, they reappear through the senses, quietly, deliberately, as if testing the shape of memory. You begin to see them not outside yourself, but within. Impressions in the corner of your vision, faces you know but cannot name, appearing in dreams too vivid to dismiss. Their presence threads through perception like a needle through fabric, stitching the worlds together. They do not come back to frighten, but to be known. And when you are still enough, when the mind quiets its noise and the eyes soften their need for proof, you realize something impossible has happened. You are not imagining them. You are perceiving them because they are perceiving you. The boundary collapses not because one side broke through, but because neither side was ever completely separate. They borrow your senses. A hand trembles when it should not. A phrase slips from your mouth that you do not remember learning. You pause in a room and feel a grief that is not yours, or a joy so sudden it floods your chest. These are the first true signs. The voice is no longer just voice. It becomes breath, weight, motion. A presence steps into the skin of awareness. In this collapse, the dead do not wear bodies. They wear attention. They shape themselves through your ability to notice. You become their doorway, and the more you allow it, the wider it opens. For some, it is a moment. For others, a lifetime. The degree depends not on skill, but on surrender. And as strange as it feels, it is never unnatural. You remember somewhere deep in the bones that this has happened before. In ancient places, at birth and death, by firelight and grave dirt, they came through like this, gentle, familiar, without spectacle. What changes now is not their power, but your permission to see it. The voice made flesh is not a return. It is a remembering that we were never alone, that they were always near, that the final language of the soul is not spoken. It is felt, seen, and known all at once. They are not perched like jurors above a trial. They do not count your failures or whisper tally marks into the silence. The dead watch, but not to weigh you. They watch to remember, because what they had, what they lost, what they still ache for, is the ordinary miracle of being alive. A child chasing birds through a puddle. A woman pressing her forehead to a closed window as rain begins. An old man adjusting the collar of his coat before stepping into the cold. These are not scenes. They are sacraments. The breath before the kiss. The pause before laughter. The hand that reaches for another in sleep. To the living they vanish in passing. To the dead they blaze like fire. They do not intrude. They linger in doorways, in music, in the hush before you speak your mind. They do not intervene unless asked, and even then rarely. What they crave is not control, it is presence. The sharpness of wind on skin, the weight of choice, the taste of regret. These things once gone cannot be touched again, only witnessed through those who remain. That is the final truth few are willing to hear. That your life, mundane as it feels, is holy. That every spilled drink, every breath caught in panic, every heartbeat that surprises you with its persistence, these are what they miss. Not the grand moments, not the triumphs, but the trembling in between, the uncertainty, the vivid, unbearable now. So they gather, sometimes alone, sometimes in crowds that swirl at the edges of rooms. They do not whisper warnings, they do not haunt, they lean in. They study, they remember, the way you scratch your arm when nervous, the way you forget you are singing under your breath, the flicker of your eyes when you lie. These to them are sacred texts, and when you speak aloud to no one, they listen. Not for secrets, but for rhythm, for inflection, for memory. In that moment, the boundary softens, the watcher and the watched become two halves of one feeling. The ache to belong again in flesh. They are not waiting for your death. They are not hoping you will join them soon. They are holding on to the echo of living through your breath, your stumbles, your warmth. And in doing so, they forgive themselves for having once taken it all for granted. The dead do not judge the living. They envy them, they love them, and they watch not to haunt, but to remember what it means to feel the sun on your face and not know the hour, only that it is morning.